So in the past I've made some tutorials on how to draw these realistic textures and you all seem to enjoy them, and in these videos I normally go over about 3 of them, but in this one we're going to go the extra mile and I'll show you how to create 10 of them. So yeah, we can't spend too long on this intro today because we have a lot to get on with. So let's start with this simple brick texture. I begin by creating some horizontal outlines and then I divide these up and create the separation for the bricks. Now that I have a brick wall outlined, I make these outlines for these bricks a lot darker and I start to add the necessary texture to these bricks. And I do this by producing random lines and marks with the pencil in various directions. I try to make each brick appear differently by changing the pressure that I apply to create different shades and also changing the motion of the pencil. Now that the bricks are done, I go over the separating areas with a consistent lighter shade and I add some smaller details on top of this to get that appearance for the mortar that's in between these bricks. So now let's create another variation of a brick texture. I start to outline some bricks like last time and I make these a little smaller and uneven. I then start to work my way through these bricks, creating rough outlines for each of them, along with some texture that produces this old and weathered appearance. Now once all these bricks are done, I start to shade in the separating mortar that's in between them. Here I swap over to a darker pencil and I make the outlines for these bricks darker so that they stand out more. I also add some more details on the bricks using this pencil. So now moving on, the next texture is this stone wall. I outline some random shapes whilst trying to keep a consistent separation and distance in between them. These are at different sizes and once I'm happy with the outline, I start to render each of them. For this texture, I use the pencil to create a collection of small circular marks and dots that come together to give these stones its appearance. Once this has been done, I place a darker outline around the stones and make them darker by adding another layer of pencil work over the top. I then start to shade in the other areas separating the stones and switch over to the darker pencil to add some extra details. So for texture number 4, we have another variation of some stones here. Now this one involves a series of these squared stones that fit tightly together. Like usual, I start by creating an outline for these and then I jump right into rendering. I approach this by creating the textures for the stones and the separating spaces. And here this separation is a lot darker than the stones, and so for that I applied a lot more pressure with the pencil. The shading for the stones here is fairly simple and most of this is drawn out using the mechanical pencil. I switch over to the other pencil at the end to outline the squared stones and make them pop out a lot more. So this texture is a little bit different. It's almost like a combination of two because it's a smoothed stone wall that's crumbled away and revealed some standard bricks behind it. I start this off by creating some light outlines, indicating where I want to place everything, and then I outline the brick wall which is similar to that first texture that we had done. Once everything is outlined, I start to render the concrete on top of the bricks, and as I do this, I draw in some cracks and details, giving that impression that this has been eroding away. And I'm also making small circular motions with the pencil to create this texture. When I move on to the bricks, I repeat the same process as I did to draw the other brick wall. I make the outlines for these bricks darker and begin to render these in detail. I apply a lot of pressure when I do this because I want it to stand out next to the concrete that's over the top of it. Now these bricks are also quite weathered and I make some various marks with the mechanical pencil to give that effect. Now when the brick wall is done, I finish the bottom part of this concrete and I repeat the same process as I did with the part that's at the top. Now I finish this off by using the softer pencil to darken a lot of it and make necessary changes. So this next one is a smooth concrete wall, and so I'm not applying a lot of pressure at all as I do this one. I'm just lightly shading with the mechanical pencil, but still adding some light details and various marks that still give the appearance of a concrete surface. For a lot of these marks, I just create small dots surrounded by slightly darker shading in comparison to the lighter background, and this one had taken quite a while to complete because I had to spend a lot of time creating all of these small details, but I think it came came out quite well. So moving on to the next one, this texture is a concrete wall with an embossed pattern that also includes these separating lines. So to start this one off, I made some vertical outlines. I then go over these and make more permanent rough looking outlines. I then start to render this, and again it's a random process that involves making various marks with the mechanical pencil. I shade most of this by creating vertical motions with the pencil. I then add some horizontal marks and apply more pressure to add some extra details. When I switch over to the darker pencil, I make the separating lines stand out a lot more, and I often use this pencil here to go over the textures and add some extra shading. So now we are moving on to a wooden texture, and I start this one out by creating some horizontal outlines, and these outlines represent the separating wooden boards, and I make these more permanent before rendering the wooden texture. Although a wooden texture like this looks impressive, it's fairly simple to create. Most of the lines here will be going in the same direction, and I draw these lines at different sizes, and I'll often have some of them changing direction slightly, and wooden planks like this tend to have knots and circular motions, maybe some chips in them amongst these grains in the wood, and so every so often I'll draw some of these in. Between each of these wooden planks I make small differences in their texture and details, and I also change the amount of pressure that I apply with the pencil with each stroke so that these lines contrast with each other. So this next one is also another variation for a wooden texture, and for this one I start by drawing in some cracks, and for most of this I repeat the same process and the same techniques as I explained in the previous texture. Here I start at the top and I begin to create those horizontal lines at different lengths and sizes, and this can be a slow process, but all of them come together and immediately give the wooden appearance. And I actually started this one by drawing in the grains so that they appeared the same shade, so I just went over this a few times and applied more pressure as I did this with the pencil to create darker lines. And so once all of this has come together, I'm able to work on top of this and create some extra details if necessary. So finally we are at number 10, and this one is going to be a wooden texture which involves these wooden boards. Now I have started off most of these textures by making outlines and then building on top of them. Here I outline the wooden boards, and remember all of these textures can be expanded upon and manipulated to produce varying results. Now I'm applying all of the same techniques which we have already taken a look at throughout this video here, and for these wooden boards I also add in these circular nails at each end, and once most of this has been rendered, I finish it off by taking the darker pencil and I go over some areas. Also, all of the equipment that I use to draw is listed and linked in the description. So there we go everyone, that concludes this tutorial, how to draw realistic textures. If you found this helpful then please give the video a like. I'll post the link to the Patreon page in the description because I'll be posting all of the real-time footage for these textures over on that page. So if you want to check that out and study the drawing process then you can do. I'll also post the link to the store and the second channel in the description as well, along with all of the social media stuff. But yeah, be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all of the videos that I release in the future, and that's pretty much everything from me today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.